The artist Snap said in his hit 1990 song, The Power, "I've got the power." Rankings. This is a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Utes crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Utes crossover. This is Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. And that's JT Wistrel's Locked On. Don't turn it off yet. Don't turn it off yet. We're going to wax poetic today about not just the power rankings that JT will help me break down, but also the Holy War and how it's being overlooked in college football. Here's the deal. If you're a Texas Tech fan, a Cincinnati fan, a fan of Oklahoma State or West Virginia, it is good when the Big 12 eats. It is good when the Big 12 wins for you. It means more money in your pocket and more opportunity down the line when you're a contender or if you're a contender to be in the college football playoff. The Big 12 has been completely overlooked by College Game Day, and this is another example with BYU Utah being passed over. And then we'll end the show with a fun little announcement. We're going to spend 8 minutes on what makes the Holy War, I think, the Big 12's best rivalry and a marquee matchup the conference needs to embrace. If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. Before we go Holy War, it's time to go power rankings here. Number 1, Texas Tech. And number 2, I think there's like the largest. It's the largest gap that we've seen in a long time. This reminds me of JT when Oklahoma was dominating the Big 12, and it was kind of OU's league and everybody else. It's what Texas Tech has looked like to this point. They have genuinely blown the doors off of everyone they played. I think they're undisputed number 1.
Oh, I think they're by far number 1. Also, loved how you opened this episode, warning people that, hey, just because you hear my voice, don't jump off, because that applies to my half of the Chef fan base once this plays as well. So I appreciate that. But no, the gap between Tech and everyone else is as big as, the only other one I can think of is Miami in the ACC right now, right? It's just two clear favorites far and away. I have Tech clearly as the top team in this conference right now, too. Then I do think, like, you have the next 3, I feel like a Utah, Cincinnati, BYU right in there. I think that Utah, you can absolutely make a case that Utah belongs over a BYU and a Cincinnati, but BYU is undefeated. So they've earned the right to be there. I don't think it's a very impressive resume they put together, but you always got to give a team credit for finding ways to win. Like the power rankings, I love the gap at number 2 because I feel the same way. It's Tech and everyone else in this league right now. And gosh, right now I'm just hoping we get a competitive Big 12 game with Tech at some point because it's not looking likely at the moment.
No, it's not. And again, it's good for the Big 12 to have stalwarts. It's good to have teams at the top of college football that can win college football playoff games. And if Tech, look, here's the deal. I know we talked a lot about Tech here, but if they end up, JT, as the number 4 team in the country and lose the Big 12 championship game, they're getting in the college football playoff. Like, that helps the Big 12 conference overall to get more teams in. You already mentioned number 2, I've got BYU undefeated. Also, there's a bit of this where it's like, hey, does BYU have a better resume than Utah or Cincinnati? And I'm not sure the answer is yes right now. But part of this is like a rollover from last season of, hey, you were the 3rd best team in the Big 12 conference. You're undefeated to this point. There's just some sort of magic in Provo that they keep, even when they go on the road, they continue to win in stupider and stupider ways. I got BYU at 2. I do believe that that's the next tier. BYU, Cincinnati, and Utah are your following tier. That there is a second mini gap almost before you get to the Houstons, Baylors, Arizonas of the world. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely, because I felt the same way when I was doing mine for this exercise. I had the Utah, Cincinnati, BYU. Came up with those ones pretty quickly, and then the rest I really had to think about. It's like, well, do I put ASU up there with a caveat? Because I still think that's a decent team with Sam Leavitt, but my gosh, their defense. And look, Utah's offense was really impressive on Saturday night. Their defense also just looked bad too. So how good are they going to be against some of these other upper echelon Big 12 teams? I think that's totally fair to question. And look, BYU, like you said, I think they if you have them at number 2, I totally get it. I'm totally fine with that. I just need to see more. Drake, if we were to get to the end of the season and we're talking about BYU's resume, I don't think we're starting with any of the wins they have compiled so far. Maybe Arizona will go on to surprise us. I am impressed by what Colorado did, upsetting Iowa State, but I do truly consider that an upset. And I just feel like we're still waiting for that signature win from this BYU team. I'm very impressed with what Utah did against an ASU team that I will say the Sun Devils, that rush defense, only allowing 78 yards per game entering that game yesterday. Utah runs for over 200. 500. Devin Dampier, clearly healthier than he was against Texas Tech too, right? So at the time we were all like, man, Utah sucks. But now we just see Tech doing the same thing to everyone else. And we see a Utah team that has now blown out a couple of Big 12 opponents here too. I don't think West Virginia is outstanding, but you still blow them out. That's what you want to do if you're a Utah team. And I continue to be so impressed by Cincinnati. I know it's only a 9-point win against a UCF team I don't love, but still the ability to upset an Iowa State, the ability to beat a Kansas team that I still like. And I think Cincinnati's Soarsby, it's been a fun story. I think we all thought Scott Satterfield was not going to make it through the season, and he's looking really strong so far. So I agree. There's a clear kind of top four in this conference right now. Whatever order you want to have them in, that's fine. And then we can figure out the rest after that. Ooh, you have Arizona very high.
Yeah, I still think Arizona's good. I still think Arizona's good. I'm not ready to jump off their train yet. I know
Iowa State 4 spots behind them, though?
Yeah, because of the injury bug. And that's where games like Utah last season is, and I do believe that if Utah had a quarterback last year, that they certainly are a bowl team. At the very least, they have the makings of a bowl team. Look, this is a case that I've made, and the people are like, oh, that's such a stupid thing to say. I've said that Kansas State at the time was the best 1-3 team in America. Why? The shell is there. The players are there. There's NFL caliber talent. They're still 1-3. I get it. But they're the best 1-3 team in America, and they have an opportunity to turn it around. Iowa State right now does not feel that way to me because of the injuries. And so I'm going to go. I'm still buying Arizona at 6. I'm not really buying Baylor because their defense is terrible. I have them at 7 right now, which it may be too high. Arizona State, especially without Sam Levitt, at 8. I think Colorado is back in the conversation at 9 for a bowl team after they beat Iowa State. The Cyclones are at 10 until they get healthy. I cannot believe in them. I've got Kansas State at 11 because JT, I don't want to be a team. TCU at 12. Kansas State just beat TCU. I don't want to be a team facing this version of Kansas State.
Oh, I totally agree right now. I said pretty early in the season, it feels like this year's Kansas State is last year's Kansas. Do I think they will end up in the Big 12 race? No. Are they going to spoil it for a bunch of teams? Yeah, they come to Utah. I think Utah's going to win that game as we sit here right now, but I don't think Utah's going to steamroll them, especially with the way Avery Johnson, and just feels like that group, they're coming together. We know all about the offensive coordinator issues they've had. He's kind of starting to get his feet under him as well, it feels like, too. So, yeah, I think for me personally, I had Kansas State at 11, so right around where you had them too. I really like the Wildcats. I have TCU at 12, Drake, and I don't know about you, but I'm so disappointed in them right now. I mean, Josh Hoover, I love, but the fact that you get absolutely blown out. It's one thing to get upset in a close and narrow game, but the way they lost that game was so disheartening. You lose a close game to an ASU, like, hey, that's last year's conference champs. That's one thing, but Kansas State in some ways has just been the most disappointing team in the Big 12, and maybe TCU wants to take that cake now, at least at this point in the season, because we all thought they could be a sleeper contender maybe, and the fact that they are 12th in the Big 12 is crazy.
Yeah, I'm selling on them. That Baylor TCU game, if the Bears are to lose, will take another possible late Big 12 contender out of contention. 13 Kansas, 14 UCF, 15 West Virginia, 16 Oklahoma State. They're not even on the list.
They're not on the list, yeah.
Yep, we're rebuilding here. So it's 1 Texas Tech, then the big gap, 2 BYU, 3 Cincinnati, 4 Utah. Then I think another smaller gap before you get to 5 Houston. Arizona comes in at 6. I'm going to go Baylor at 7. Give me Arizona State at 8. That's your top half. 9 Colorado, 10 Iowa State. At 11 Kansas State. TCU comes in at 12. Kansas 13. UCF 14, West Virginia 15, Oklahoma State, the surface of the sun and the bottom of all things bad and terrible. Coming up,
is that you? Is that your face on the Gap photo? Is that you as the model?
It's not even me modeling the Gap thing. Like I don't even know who that is, but he's wearing a Gap. I'm not even sure if I have the rights to that photo. Coming up, ESPN certainly has the rights to do College Game Day from a Big 12 game. They just refuse to. That's right here on Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. It's that Japanese craftsmanship in a completely head-turning look that'll make you cool. Mazda is moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. This week's moment that moved the game forward is the stupidest, silliest, wildest win you could possibly concoct. I'm going to go with Will Farron's field goal that he made 45-yarder in overtime after he'd already missed a field goal once, and somehow magically sneaks one through, sends BYU to another overtime, and wins the game. That was a magical moment for a team to come back and win a game. Even if your team loses, you can keep yourself moving forward by going the extra mile, and Mazda certainly goes the extra mile for you when crafting their vehicles. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Do it with Mazda today. JT West yourself, Locked On Utes. Look, we could talk about the winner of this BYU Utah game, and I'm sure we'll get into a bit of how the game could play out. But number one, I think both of these fan bases can agree. That's right, agree on one thing. ESPN dodging the Holy War, ESPN dodging BYU Utah, and honestly dodging the Big 12 altogether this season is something that is not conducive to growing the game of college football and is a slap in the face of the conference. And I think embarrassing for ESPN to expose themselves as a network that only wants to plug the SEC.
And the big other brands, I'll say that too, because the only other ones they've gone to are a top Big Ten matchup. So it's literally College Game Day used to be special because they would go to App State. It was 2 years ago. They went to a Big Sky game. That was massive, an FCS game in late November. It was an awesome atmosphere. It was super cold. Like, it was one of those things those kids will never forget. How about even when they went to Cal last year? Those were the moments that are so incredible. And it seems like they're so far removed from that. And I just think it's so interesting what's going on, Drake, right now, because if you look at, there you go. Yeah, right there, Ole Miss and Georgia this week. And you know what this will be? We've gone 6 weeks of 6 of the 8 weeks we've gone in the college football season. Now they've gone to an SEC site too, right? Like, excluding week 0 last year, all five of their first destinations a year ago were SEC. 9 of the 14 weeks a season ago went to an SEC school too. Like, if we look back at 2023, of the 14 weeks, only 5 games had current SEC members involved before that ESPN deal went through. So now that the ESPN deal has gone through, they're really just going to SEC matchups. And I know a lot of these are top 10 matchups, but you're really missing out on showcasing what makes college football great as a whole. It's the individual passion that all schools have for their fan bases. And now you're just painting yourself as not just ESPN, but ESPN SEC, basically, because that is all you continue to do. And I just think it's really disappointing. I loved when they went to James Madison a couple years ago. Drake, since this since this deal with the SEC went through, they have not gone to a Big 12 game. They have not been. Like, it's really sad and disappointing. They've completely left us behind. I appreciate what Big Noon is doing by coming to the game this weekend. That was just announced. But for game day to continue to just be like SEC or fine, a really good Big Ten matchup, I think is really disappointing for what we all love about the sport and the individual passion fan base that exists outside of just the SEC.
Yeah, big noon kickoff coming to town this weekend, which there is not a noon kick in this game. I was so worried, by the way, that this would get the same treatment that Utah and Texas Tech got. Now, I'm going to come off of some of the comments that I made alongside Chris Level and said, what I said at the time was this will feel more like a neutral site game than it would if it was a night game at Utah. That's fair for anyone in college football. No one has a better atmosphere at 10 a.m. This would have been a tragedy to see BYU and Utah play at 10 a.m. So I'm glad that Big Noon didn't ruin that. And I think that I'm sure the conference, the Big 12, stood up, the presidents, the ADs, and said, look, we will not forfeit a night game in this league just to have Big Noon kickoff. Because let's face it, it still feels like, and maybe it's just the history of College Game Day, Big Noon kickoff doesn't give you the same pomp and circumstance of knowing that College Game Day is coming to town. Like, that's the marquee show. And getting Big Noon just feels like a consolation prize that's sweet, but I'm not sure if it moves the needle.
You're absolutely right. It's a prize, but it is just a consolation. It's like, yeah, you got second. College Game Day is still College Game Day. Even the moves that Big Noon makes is to try and meet the hype of College Game Day. Dave Portnoy is only on that show because they are trying to mimic what Pat McAfee does. Even like me personally, I watch Game Day now more than, even though I get frustrated at the destinations they go to, the show actually still will talk about Utah, BYU. Like, they will still mention them. It's not as much the SEC, but I watch the Game Day more. And I think almost everyone does, because it's become the staple, the icon. I do just think it's a little bit better of a product, even though I love Big Noon and I'm so grateful they went to Utah a couple weeks ago and was an incredible atmosphere, but it's not College Game Day, the staple. Like, the reason Big Noon exists is because of College Game Day. Like, if you look at NFL pregame shows, they don't just exist because of the CBS one or whoever it might be. Like, they exist because they want to hype up their NFL product. Yes, Fox is trying to do that with their product, but the reason every single one of their ads also says, like, we have the best announcers, the best games, the best pregame, is because they don't. They're just trying to tell you that, because the best is still College Game Day and what they offer. And the fact that College Game Day continues to not want to spotlight a conference too, they have a deal with, like, let's not forget, the Utah Arizona State game was on ESPN. Not the halftime show cared about it. The halftime show of the game last night, Drake, did not mention Utah and Arizona State at all. It was just highlights throughout the rest of the day. So this is where it does get so disappointing when this is the same network that's going to bring us all the college football games. These are the analysts that are going to be analyzing it. And unless some other team in the Big 12 steps up, we're going to be like, yeah, Tech's good, but how good are they? They just blow everyone else out because no one else over there seems to care as much about the Big 12. It's really unfortunate how this rivalry and matchup continues to be neglected by ESPN. But even though it's a consolation prize, I appreciate that Fox is still bringing their pregame show there, and very grateful they're not changing the kickoff time, as you mentioned, Drake. This game had to be at night. All rivalry games need to be at night, except for the game, the Ohio State-Michigan one. That's fine.
Is it fair to say this is less of a conversation? Because, I mean, this is Locked On Big 12, right? And the onus is on me to talk. Well, and I've mentioned this before, too. I'm not going to be able to talk as much Oklahoma State as I can Texas Tech. I cannot talk as much, West Virginia as I can Utah in a season where there are contenders that deserve. And maybe that's the pot calling the kettle here a little bit by saying College Game Day is avoiding the Big 12. But I think the Big 12 does have some legitimate matchups that they are intentionally redirecting from. Is it safe to say this is a conversation more about the Big 12 as a whole than it is necessarily just BYU and Utah?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just feel like a lot of these teams don't get their credit, don't get their due. Look, do I think BYU was a college football playoff team last year? No. Do I think they were should have been ranked a little higher? I do. I feel like they could have at least been in that discussion a little bit more. So I feel like we do frequently see the Big 12 get left out of things. And it is unfortunate that some brands do pay the price at time. I mean, we've seen Cincinnati, right? Like they're a team that doesn't always get brought up as much. We got our guy for Locked On Bearcats is doing a great job now bringing back Cincinnati coverage for us on the Big 12 network. But it is unfortunate that so often you see some of these that brands that aren't as popular, even just among, Utah and BYU are going to be a little more popular because of the success that they've had and even the brand and what that represents. Then some of those other schools, as we mentioned, maybe a Baylor not doing quite as much as of late, at least. But yeah, it's unfortunate that ESPN doesn't give these schools a little bit more coverage they deserve. And I feel like this genuinely changed once that deal went through with the SEC, just the way they prop up the SEC. It's only ever the SEC game at night. Like, I appreciate that. NBC with their deal. If Notre Dame has the biggest game, they'll put that game at night. Like, I would love it if Utah BYU was treated by, and I know it's on Fox in this instance, but like, let's say it was on ESPN. If you want to do Georgia Ole Miss because it's the top 10 matchup in terms of reserving that for 7:30, that's fine. Like, but give us another prime slot. And it doesn't feel like they want to do that. It feels like the Big 10 is just, Big 12's continuously getting the Heisman. And it's disappointing how they're trying to lower the value of our product by saying like, oh, they're just not as good. And they're going to learn just how good Tech is when some of those teams see them in the playoff. I would not want to see the Red Raiders right now.
Yeah, Texas Tech could go to the national championship. I really believe they've got the talent, especially on the defensive line and the defense, to make a huge run. Coming up, big news. I'm going Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, if you're a fan of the Big 12, you're a fan of Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, FanDuel is here for you, and the NFL season is also here for you, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Look, if you think that BYU will beat Utah as 3-point underdogs, that Utah will whoop up on BYU and cover that 3-point spread, you can go right now to FanDuel and put $5 down on a bet, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Go to FanDuel.com today to download that app and get started with FanDuel. Today's show is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts. I can't. I'm 24 years old and I don't really know how to do the money thing. And that's where Monarch Money has helped me exponentially. All-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface, all on your laptop or phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. You put off organizing your finances for a while, Monarch is here for you. Identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought. Monarch can even go back and look at forgotten 401ks from your past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. 50% off your first year. monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege at Monarch Money. I'm going to the Holy War. I mean, incredibly excited to see BYU and Utah square off in a game against an undefeated and a one-loss school in what I think is the best rivalry now in the Big 12. You don't get this pomp and circumstance from Kansas and Kansas State, from Baylor and TCU. They're not even going to sell out Baylor and TCU as two teams that think they have Heisman caliber quarterbacks and contenders. The Holy War, these teams could be, you could flip it. You could have 0-6 and 1-5, and they would still sell the thing out. Like, this is a kind of matchup the Big 12 has missed without Texas and Oklahoma being in the conference. Not to say Utah and BYU are the same level of brand, but this is as close as it's getting with a matchup where you can wholly expect, no matter how good or bad the two teams are, for them to be there. I was there last year in Rice-Eccles. That's the famous Mark Harlan game. Wild. I thought it was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in all of college football. I've seen multiple games in LaVell Edwards. I love their in-game experience, their fan experience, the way that they, the fire dancers going into the fourth quarter. I think it's an incredible display of college football. And thanks to the friends at Explore Utah Valley and at Sundance and even BYU for reaching out and saying, hey, you want a couple tickets? Come have the full Holy War game day experience. Compare it to what you saw last year with an incredible atmosphere at Utah. JT, this is what the Big 12 needs to build more upon. This is the kind of matchup that keeps this conference relevant in college football.
There are only so many rivalries in college football, Drake, to me, that are 365. Every single day, there is a back and forth. There is a debate. Yes, like if you ask a Kansas fan what they think of Kansas State at times, they'll tell you and be candid. But literally, Utah and BYU fans get into it every single day, it feels like, Drake. And there are only so many rivalries in college football that meet that. And I do think this is one of them. I cannot wait for this game. Glad that you'll be there because I think it's going to be one heck of a game, too. Like, I feel like Utah has a very good shot to win this game. It's a big test for both of these schools, though. In some ways, neither of these teams has a super impressive win, I can say either, right? Because Utah, yeah, you beat Arizona State badly. It was still with a backup quarterback. BYU, you went on the road and beat an Arizona. I have no idea how good Arizona is. I still don't think they're very good. And we saw Iowa State throttle them recently here too. We know how bad they were last year as well. So this is a massive test for both of these schools. I love that both are ranked inside the top 25 because I do think that right now they absolutely are top 25 teams in the country. And this is the type of rivalry, the stage, everything. There's been so much buildup and hype into this game too. Drake, how about the whole Keanu Tonavasa saga, right? Like that whole thing comes to a head here. You got Carson Ryan is a transfer from Utah who went to BYU. How about our best two pass rushers, John Henry Daly, Logan Fano? They also went to BYU and then transferred to Utah. A lot of these guys grew up playing high school football together. A lot of these guys were teammates going against each other their entire lives. And now they get to meet up on what is one of the best rivalries. And I do believe the best in the Big 12. This game is going to be absolutely epic. And I cannot wait for it to kick off on Saturday night.
No doubt. What makes so you've seen BYU and Utah, the Holy War, and this is less of a conversation right now about who's going to win and the rivalry itself. Are you picking at BYU or me picking at Utah or vice versa? And more about just how this is good for the Big 12. You've seen it up close and personal, as have I. What makes this game special in a way the rest of the country can't quite understand? Because like there is Alabama-Auburn, or there is a rivalry between Notre Dame and USC, right? But I just don't think people get BYU Utah on the level that they probably should try to understand it.
Yeah, I feel like just the passion runs so deep, and the fact that like you have so many guys who will go to church with people that are for Utah and then go to BYU. Like you'll sit next to each other at church, and the night before you're rooting for a different game, so you get some of that friendly banter in there too. But this state, obviously, too, there is a real thing of Utah against the world. I think the state as well, right? Like just Utah is not discussed as much. It's starting to be a little bit more. Utah schools are for the rest of the country, so I think in some ways you get united around that. The state pride as well too comes into play with this here, but yeah. And there obviously is the religious element to like the church being involved for BYU. You know, Utah has some church members involved too as well. So there's just a lot of connections. There's something you grow up either a Utah, you grow up a BYU fan that run very deep. I mean, Drake, I was there for the game that took place in 2021, the Charlie Brewer game. Utah lost. It was the first time BYU had beaten Utah in like 9 years. And I remember just, even though I was obviously devastated that Utah lost at the time being a student at Utah, I was in awe of that atmosphere as BYU stormed the field, and you could not see a blade of grass, turf, whatever it is out there. It was epic, and I love that passion in college football, and you could just see how much it meant to all of those guys out there too. This one does mean more. The players, the coaches will talk about it's just about going 1-0 this week. No, this one means more. It's been circled on everyone's calendar. As soon as it gets announced, it's going to be absolutely epic, and this rivalry, because of how close a lot of these guys are, all the connections that exist in Utah, is what makes it special, Drake, and I'm just so excited, like I mentioned, for this to get underway. And in the brief time that you've been involved with this rivalry, what do you feel like makes it special and different?
I think what's so wild about it is it's the most sober rivalry in college football. You know that, and you can make jest of that and be like, okay, well, that's just a moniker to throw on the game and say, this is funny and different and weird. I think weird is a word that a lot of people will use outside looking in for a rivalry like this, where it's predominantly Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints fans going against one another. And they use that moniker weird because they are ignorant of the faith, or ignorant of the fan bases, and they believe things that aren't true. And so the way that I look at a matchup like this is you walk into a BYU-Utah game, especially, and I'm excited to see it in Provo, where not a lot of alcohol outside, no alcohol inside. And it is insane to me how some of these fan bases, we talk about a lot about how LSU or Auburn or Georgia at night have these, Tennessee at night have these intense atmospheres because of the drinking. They had all day to drink.
True.
And that's the first thing you use is, the tailgate scene, and they go get hammered, and then that's what makes, these games great. What makes BYU and Utah intense and almost eerie is every single one of these people stone cold sober. Every single person in this venue is not drinking. They are just taking in college football at its finest. And these are two teams squaring off that have a lot of, like, the moral value of these two fan bases, the moral values of these two universities, even though Utah is not explicitly religious, is something that is different than what you would get from an Auburn or get from a Georgia, or you would get from Ohio State. This is called the Holy War because there is, like you said, folks that go to church together on both sides of the aisle every Sunday in the greater Salt Lake area. And then on Saturday, they show up at the game and they are as rabid as possible just on purely loving college football and loving their team. And I don't want to make this an entire conversation about alcohol, right? But that's a big piece of that to me. It's weird in college football that a fan base could actually love its school, could actually love its team and build an atmosphere without drinking. That's just antithetical to what we built college football on for some reason. But these two do. And every time I walk into an atmosphere that's BYU or Utah, I look around and I think, how in the world are they yelling like this? How in the world are they this fierce?
I will say really quick, we both know all Utah fans aren't sober, but I do agree with what you're saying.
I mean, right. But I imagine, it's going to be, I imagine it's going to be a primarily sober game with these two fan bases, right? And that's just, that's unheard of, really, in college football. And I think that's, and again, what a weird first takeaway, a weird big takeaway, but that's where I think it's so unique. There are 2 bars in Provo, I think.
I think so. I think that actually number is correct. Yeah.
I've been to one of them for sport just to see what was, what it was like. And not a lot to write home about. I believe it was Wisconsin fans a couple of years ago, drank it dry. You could possibly do that, but you're going to see two fan bases that you mentioned passion. They're passionate on their own. They're passionate in a way that's different from most college football fan bases.
Yeah, totally agree. It is something so unique to this rivalry and all the ways that tie them together. And the fact that, like you said, so many college football fan bases look forward to the tailgate and the pregame, some of them even more than the game itself. That is not the case in this rivalry. Everyone is locked in, bought in early, and they are fired up. They're getting in their seats as early as possible. BYU is going to be rowdy. They're going to be ready to roll. A lot of those fan bases in the other conferences are rowdy because of, like you said, what they're doing before the game. BYU is going to be rowdy because they want to do everything they possibly can to help their school win. That's what Utah fans are going to try to do as well. I'm very curious to see what the split will be in this game. I got to imagine it'll be 70-30 BYU to Utah fans, but maybe it'll be higher. Maybe it'll be 60-40. It's going to be fun. The fact that this is just a 45-minute drive basically and maybe an hour if you're doing the campus itself, only an hour apart from the two, makes it awesome. The fact that you'll have the back and forth all week long. I always look forward to this week, and the game is absolutely going to be electric. And Drake, you're going to have a great time out there, my friend.
Super excited for it, JT, and I know you'll be glued to it. This has been and always will be this JT West yourself, Locked On Utes. Locked On. Thanks for making our shows your first listen every single day. It's Crossover with Utes and Dose Grande.